There is something that happens in the aftermath of loss that nobody prepares you for. Not the grief itself, not the confusion, not the long stretch of days where you wake up and the first thing you feel is the absence of something that used to be there. Those parts people talk about. Those parts you expected. What nobody prepares you for is the moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when you start to see it differently. When the thing you lost begins to look less like something that was taken from you and more like something that was removed for you. Not by accident, not randomly, but with a precision that your pain wouldn't let you recognize until now. That moment is what this is about. Because if you are watching this, there is something in your recent past, a door that closed, a plan that collapsed, a version of your future that stopped being available, that you have been carrying as a loss, as evidence that something went wrong, as a wound that you've been tending quietly, wondering if it will ever fully heal. And what I want to offer you today is not false comfort, not a promise that everything happens for a reason in some vague cosmic sense that explains nothing, but something more specific, more honest, more useful than that. What if the thing that fell apart was never supposed to hold? The first thing, not everything that ends was meant to last. And knowing the difference changes everything. There are two kinds of things that end in a life. The first kind ends because something went wrong. A mistake was made. A choice led somewhere it shouldn't have. Something that could have worked didn't. And the loss is real and the grief is appropriate. And the lesson is worth sitting with. But there is a second kind. And this is the one most people never learn to recognize. The second kind ends because it completed its purpose. It gave you what it was supposed to give you. It brought you to the edge of something you needed to reach. And then it stepped aside. Not because it failed, because it finished. The relationship that ended right before you developed the clarity to know what you actually needed. The job that fell apart right before you were ready to admit it was never the right fit. The plan that collapsed right before something better had room to form. These weren't failures. These were completions. And the difference between seeing them as failures and seeing them as completions is not just philosophical. It is the difference between carrying the weight of a wound and walking forward with the wisdom of an education. Second, the version of your life that fell apart was built on a foundation that wasn't yours. Most of us spend years, sometimes decades, building a life that looks right from the outside, hitting the markers, reaching the milestones, constructing something that matches the template we were handed by family, by culture, by the accumulated expectations of everyone who has ever had an opinion about who we should become. And for a while, that works, or it seems to work. And then something shifts, and the structure starts to show its cracks. And piece by piece, or all at once, the version of your life you'd been building begins to come apart. And the pain of that is real. But underneath the pain, if you look carefully, there is something else. A quiet relief. The kind that feels almost inappropriate to admit. The kind that whispers that maybe, just maybe, some part of you has been waiting for this, has been exhausted by the effort of maintaining something that was never quite right, has been quietly suffocating inside a version of your life that fit the expectations of everyone except you. The collapse was not a failure of who you are. It was a rejection of what wasn't yours. And that rejection, as painful as it felt, was the first honest thing that happened in a long time. Third, what you lost made space for something that could not have arrived while it was still there. This is the part that is hardest to see from inside the loss, because from inside it, the space feels like emptiness, like absence, like something missing where something used to be. And emptiness is uncomfortable. Uncomfortable enough that most people rush to fill it. Rush to replace what left with something new before the space has had time to do what space does. But space is not emptiness. Space is potential. Space is the condition that makes new things possible. And the things that are trying to find their way into your life right now. The people, the opportunities, the version of yourself that has been waiting for room to emerge. They needed exactly this much space to arrive. Think about what couldn't fit while the old thing was still there. The relationship that needed the previous one to be gone first. The clarity about what you actually want that could only come after the noise of what you thought you wanted finally went quiet. The version of yourself that has more honesty, more depth, more alignment with who you actually are. That version couldn't coexist with the one you'd been performing. The loss created the conditions, and the conditions are exactly right for what's coming next. Fourth, you are not starting over. You are starting from everything you now know. One of the most painful stories we tell ourselves after something falls apart is that we are back at the beginning. That the time invested was wasted, that we have to start over from nothing and everything that came before was lost, along with the thing that ended. But this is not true. And somewhere underneath the grief, you already know it isn't true. You are not the person you were before any of this happened. You cannot be. Every experience changes the structure of who you are, at a level that goes deeper than memory. The things you learned about yourself in that relationship. The clarity you developed about what you value in that job. The understanding of your own limits and your own capacity that only came from being tested the way you were tested. None of that left when the thing ended. All of it stayed. All of it is now part of the foundation you are building from. Which means you are not starting over. You are starting from a place of knowing that the earlier version of you didn't have access to. And that changes everything about what you are capable of building next. Fifth, the falling apart was the falling into place. You just couldn't see it from inside it. There is a perspective problem at the center of every loss. You are always too close to it when it happens to see it clearly. The pain is too immediate. The absence is too loud. The future looks too uncertain for any kind of pattern to be visible. And so you carry it as a wound when it was actually a redirection. You mourn it as a loss when it was actually a release. You interpret it as evidence that something went wrong when it was actually the most precise and necessary thing that could have happened at exactly that moment in your life. 6 months from now, a year from now, maybe longer. You will look back at this exact moment, this chapter that felt like falling apart, and you will see it differently. You will see the thread that connects what ended to what began. You will see how the door that closed was the only reason the right one had room to open. You will see how the timing of the loss was also the timing of the preparation for everything that followed. You will see it, not as comfort, as fact. And when you do, you will understand something that changes the way you move through every difficult season that comes after this one. That falling apart and falling into place are not opposites. They are the same motion, seen from two different distances. So here's what I want you to do right now. Take a slow breath, in through your nose. Hold it for a moment, and let it go slowly, and say this out loud. Mean it. What fell apart was making space. What feels like loss is actually release. and what is coming is already on its way. Say it one more time, with intention. What fell apart was making space. What feels like loss is actually release, and what is coming is already on its way. Let that settle, because the chapter you are in right now, the one that felt like collapse, like confusion, like everything going wrong at once, that chapter is not the end of your story. It is the hinge, the turning point, the moment that everything after it will trace itself back to. And if this found you when you needed it, leave one word in the comments. Release. Just that. Because naming what you are letting go of is the first step to receiving what's coming next. And if someone you know is in the middle of something falling apart right now, share this with them. Not with an explanation. Just send it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remind someone that what looks like the end might be the most important beginning of their life. You're not falling apart. You're falling into place. And everything is exactly as it needs to be.